Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched The Roses. Let's talk about it. So The Roses is directed by Jay Roach, who also directed, listen to this, the Austin Powers films, as well as Meet the Parents, Dinner for Schmucks, The Campaign, Trumbo, and Bombshell. Bombshell with Nicole Kidman and Margot Robbie, like that bombshell. And on that bombshell, like what a varied and diverse filmography. Anyways, the latest film that he's directed is The Roses, which is a remake of an older version, I've been told. And this one stars Benedict Cumberbatch and Olivia Colman as the titular Roses, a married couple who endure and cause a whole bunch of issues within their marriage. This film tells the hilarious tale of a failing, toxic, insufferable, horrendous marriage between two people who are far more alike than they are different, but at the same time have such hatred, resentment, anger, misplaced anger in some cases towards each other that it just intoxicates their relationships and makes it just completely unbearable. But do they break up? No, of course not. But listen, I know that this is a remake to another film, and we recently talked about Hollywood's lack of creativity, creative bankruptcy. Yeah, that problem, that issue that Hollywood is facing, but no one really wants to talk about. Yeah, this is another symptom of that because it is a remake. But I had to say, as far as remakes go, I really enjoyed this one. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I might be part of the problem. But I had a really fun time with The Roses. And I have to say it was two elements that really stood out to me with this film. First of all, the script. The script is just... The script is just as unrelenting as the hatred that is felt between Theo and Ivy, the couple in this film. I mean, the script is just so airtight. Every single line means something. Every single line matters. Almost every single line got a reaction from the audience. Like, I haven't come across such well-written dialogue in a long time. This is an airtight script, guys, I must say, and it really helped elevate an otherwise pretty simple and, you know, run-of-the-mill movie. In terms of direction, I wouldn't say there was a ton that stood out to me. It doesn't have crazy color grading or cinematography or anything like that, but what it does have is an airtight script and something else which I'll talk about in a second. But just sticking to the script, I think the main thing that really stood out to me and the audience at large, at least judging by their reactions to almost every single line here, was the jokes. This film is so funny. This film is actually so funny. But the thing is that these characters, right, these evil people, they are extremely intelligent, they are extremely sharp and witty, and so the jokes have to be as well. Like, the paper has to match the characterizations, and it absolutely does. Whoever was writing, whoever was doing the little scribing was spitting, because each and every line had us gagged in the cinema. We were either laughing or gasping the entire time. And another thing, the other secret ingredient to the greatness of this movie was definitely the performances by Olivia Colman and Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, here's the thing, it's kind of a mixed bag in that, technically speaking, I feel like they were miscast, or at least one of them was miscast. If we were going to go for Olivia Colman, then Benedict Cumberbatch is miscast. And if we we're going to go for Benedict Cumberbatch, then Olivia Colman was miscast. Because as a couple, they don't strictly work. Like, it's just a little bit off, and I know that it's probably down to my own prejudices and that of society, and the fact that, you know, Olivia Colman's character seems a little bit older, and what we expect to see on screen and in society is a bit different to what we see here. I completely understand that and I'm cognizant of that, but it doesn't change the fact that watching this film, I didn't feel that connection connection. I didn't feel that romantic connection. And that's a bit of an issue considering that this film is centered on the breakdown of a marriage which used to be a very happy and very romantic relationship. So you kind of need that romantic element to be sold and to be convincing at the beginning so that you become invested in the romance and the love between these two characters, and you become heartbroken yourself as you see it fall apart towards the end. That beginning part was never too convincing to me, and so that's why I say the casting is a bit of a mixed bag, but I feel that they more than, or at least kind of make up for it by the fact that towards the end, when we do get to the hatred, when we do get to the punches flying, okay, the verbal assault, they are just absolutely golden. They are flawless. And in fact, we get a hint of what's to come, because there's a sort of prelude at the beginning of the film where they're sitting in therapy saying crazy shit, like just the craziest insults towards each other, just hurling abuse. And I loved it. That's when I was locked in. I was sitting like this, like, oh, this is about to be excellent. That was the little hints, the little clue that I got that everyone in the building was switched on at work that day. And then as the film goes on, the script just gets better and better. And not only is that because of the golden script, but also because of Benny C and Ollie C turning in fantastic performances as these titular characters here. So whilst the love between the Roses wasn't as convincing to me, the War of the Roses most definitely was. And whilst I had a fun time with this movie overall, if I was to nitpick a couple of critiques, it would be, first of all, when it comes to the story, one of the sort of heavy overarching themes that we have here is that of resentment between the spouses, particularly on the part of Theo, who starts to resent his wife Ivy after she finds great success with her restaurant, which becomes a whole franchise both nationwide and then eventually even globally, whilst he is sitting in the stench of failure as an architect who built a museum that was supposed to be his magnum opus, but that ended up being destroyed by a strong gust of wind because of poor design choices. And so he has to face the fallout and repercussions from that, and that absolutely destroys his career. And so he refocuses his energy on his kids who become his next projects. And whilst I think that is a really interesting storyline, I didn't really see the connective tissue between Theo being this like architect, you know, and he's really invested in his work. He really cares about design and hates having to deal with limitations like budget or difficult stakeholders, you know, stuff that we all have to deal with in project worlds. I didn't really see the connective tissue between that and him becoming like a health junkie and turning his kids into Olympians. That didn't really make sense for me. I felt like Theo became a whole different character when it came to raising his children. And whilst it was fun seeing the interactions between Theo and his kids and them kind of training up to be these professional athletes, and in the meantime you have their poor mum who just wants them to have fun and eat snacks and not be so serious about their workouts. So it creates a sort of chasm between them, you know, between her and her kids. The conflict that arose from this development was all great, but I still didn't feel like architect Theo and health junkie Theo were the same person. And then my last critique is kind of a small thing, but really it isn't. Really, it's kind of a big deal, honestly. And that is the surroundings for these characters, these very British characters. You have Benny C and Ollie C in this movie, and they've been plopped in the middle of California? Why have we done that? Like, why couldn't it be like York or like Leamington Spa? If you didn't want to do London, you would have done one of those, right? Like, why are they in California? Why not Durham? That's what they would be. That's where they actually would be, right? Norwich. That's where they want me. It was a little bit distracting for me as a British person, seeing these characters, you know, in America and have to deal with like Americanisms. That wasn't really the central point of the story, but it became a sort of distracting element there that, like I said, distracted from the most important part, which is the disintegration of the Roses' marriage. So then we had to deal with things like the friendship group, which at times was funny, but nowhere near as funny as the Roses themselves, and nowhere near as funny as it would have been to see them in their element with their British snobby friends, right? Like that would have been so much better, so much more consistent and a bit more cohesive in terms of cultures. There was a bit of a cultural commentary element sprinkled in there to kind of acknowledge the fact that there's this British couple in the middle of America, but it wasn't substantial enough to justify the fact that this film was set in America. It should have been set in the UK. Then we could have dealt with classism. Then we could have dealt with a whole host of other things that was just missing. There was a bit of subtext missing from them being the States, I must say. Even though one of my favorite characters from this film did end up being Andy Samberg's Barry. But equally, you also have Kate McKinnon, who I usually love in stuff, in anything that she's in, but I really wasn't the biggest fan of her character here. Her whole thing is like being a perv. Like being a perv and an adulteress, or an almost adulteress. She has a huge crush on Benny C, and like, you know, duh, obviously, although she's a lesbian in real life, but you know, it's a funny little gag. I didn't really find that running gag to be as funny, as hilarious as just the sniping and the wittiness of the Roses. So I could have done without that. And also the presence of so many SNL alumni made this feel like an SNL sketch at times, which I don't think did the film justice. And finally, my last critique of the movie would be, it kind of jumped the gun at the end. No pun intended. I remember watching the trailer for this film in front of The Naked Gun, which was also hilarious, by the way. Funniest film of the year so far, without question. But that was when I saw the trailer for the first time. Now, going into this film, that was the energy that I expected. The sort of at each other's throats-ness, violent, vicious, but still hilarious and snarky. That was the energy that I thought I would be getting from the final product. But in reality, it was a lot more tame. The abuse was more verbal than it was physical, at least up until the very end, where things completely imploded and switched to, honestly, the Naked Gun territory. So, as I said, it kind of jumped the gun at the end. It felt a little bit disjointed from the vast majority, like the first 2/3 of the film. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I definitely preferred it when we were dealing with the wittiness, the snipes that the characters had for one another. And so with all of that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving The Roses a 7.5 out of 10. So that's it from me. Yes, 4 out of 4 done. I filmed 4 videos today like a real YouTuber. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on The Roses, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this movie down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch your videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.